I'm going to start out just a couple things, and then we'll open up the questions. First, I want to wish, some of you may know Buddy Baker, an agent in the business. I've known Buddy for 20-plus years, really good guy. And this thing we're all dealing with struck him very close. He lost both parents this weekend within about 10 minutes apart. So very sad deal. And a lot, we all probably know people that this has touched, but I want to wish Buddy and his family all the best through such a trying time. Also, I want to just thank our first responders, doctors, nurses, all the people on the front line, pharmacists, the people at the grocery store. I mean, just people that are willing to deliver groceries. Any others, I know I'm leaving people out because I don't know everything that everybody's doing, but as I'm sure many of you, I don't have a voice and a microphone a lot right now. We're behind the scenes getting ready for the draft, but I wanted to take this time and make sure, I really appreciate everyone, as does our entire Bills family, and I'm sure Bills Mafia will back that as well. And then last, the Buffalo community, seeing, all the people just coming together, trying to help as only Buffalo would do. It has been great to see all sorts of fundraisers, and still working on finalizing something here, but we've got a pretty cool little deal Monday. I was hoping to get it ready by now, but not quite ready. But Monday, we're going to do a partner with United Way to have obviously I'm going to make a donation, but a way for our fans to do it. And it's going to be what I think is a pretty neat little contest to help raise awareness and be involved with the Bills as well. So I think Monday morning, Derek and his staff are going to help coordinate and get that out. So with that, I'll open up the questions on free agency or draft or whatever you guys have for me.
Brandon, hey, Sal Capaccio here, WGR. Hope you and your family are staying safe right now. Just want to say that. But I know there's been some reporting and sourcing on how exactly the Stefon Diggs trade came about. Can you just kind of give us, in your own way and how you can, a timeline of how things unfolded for you?
Yeah, so it was that Monday. The negotiating period had started around noon. So, late afternoon, I don't know exactly the time, Sal. It was 4:30, 5 o'clock, somewhere in there. We reached out and just kind of, as we do all the time, we hear rumors on, some of the same rumors we heard at the trade deadline last season on guys. I think it was pretty open that we were snooping around mid-season to make a trade for another receiver, and we couldn't find a deal that worked for us. And Stefon was one that we had looked into at that point, along with some other guys. And, Minnesota was not willing to part with him at that point. But we checked back in, and it didn't seem like a definitive 100% no. They just said, listen, we're not shopping him. We just agreed to a contract, a little over a year ago. So talked to them, and they just said, listen, we'll listen, but it's got to be something because, we got to replace this guy, and he's our number one receiver. And so did that. And then, we were talking to other receivers, agents, working through there, looking, seeing what was available, what our options were. And then at the end of the night, I had told Minnesota, hey, we'll circle back. And they were starting to get a little antsy because they were getting pressure. There were some other teams involved. And so we worked on it probably around 9:45 or so. And I think, 20, 30 minutes later, we got it knocked out.
Thank you.
Hey, Brandon, Matt Bove with WKBW. You kind of just alluded to the process in which you guys acquired Stefon, but why was this a move that you felt like your team needed to make at this particular time?
Yeah, I mean, I said at the end of the season press conference, I blame myself as much as anybody. It's my job and my team's job, to my personnel staff, to add weapons to help Brian Daboll and his staff, and help our quarterback and Sean. And so one of the things that I thought we still needed, hence I was referring to us, snooping around at the trade deadline, was, finding somebody opposite John Brown, and to pair with Cole Beasley. And, again, the draft is stacked with receivers as well. We've talked about that before. But I think it became ever present with what's going on around us, that we don't know what kind of offseason we'll have. And I just felt like it was going to be really hard unless I traded up really high to find a guy that I know could walk in day one. If let's just say it's August before we get back to things, I just felt a proven commodity was worth this. The trade value of this move, Matt, probably moved us up 3 to 4 slots from 22, might have got us to 18, 19. Not as high as I thought we would have had to get to get one of those, premier guys that I knew would walk in the door even August 1st and be ready to roll.
Hey, Brandon, how you doing, buddy?
Hey, Sal, how you doing, man?
I tried swinging a golf club the other day. My arm almost fell off because of my shoulder, so I think I'm done. I think it's over. Anyway, I got 2 quick things that I want to follow back on that, what you just talked about, but I have a draft question. Just, do you consider Stefon Diggs almost like your first-round draft pick this year, given that you may have taken a receiver and he's on a 4-year deal? So that's one. But then my main question I want to talk about is how you guys are doing the draft preparation, because obviously we're in a new world. And I'd like you to kind of break down how you guys are going about, researching these players without interviewing them, without seeing them live. So just go through that process. But first, just the Diggs question.
Yeah, Sal. It is one of those things where I view it, that's our first round pick that we moved up from. The way I'm viewing it with the draft capital that we moved to acquire him is that we moved up, let's just say 4 spots, and we traded up there and we got him, and we know the player. It's just a more proven thing right now. And again, what we're dealing with did weigh into that. Is I know this guy knows ball and will be able to understand the verbiage once he learns our system quicker than, a lot of the stuff from college is all signaled in. A lot of these guys aren't in huddles. So the biggest transition for these receivers beyond the routes, the physical stuff, is just hearing these long play calls in the huddle and processing in their head from as little as, do I go left, do I go right, am I on the ball, am I off the ball? Now I got to start reading what coverage they're in to know what route I got to do, whether I got to convert, all those things. The mental part is so hard, and that's why I think so many receivers, we talk about all the time, probably one of the higher bust rates across the league. I think it's more mental than physical. The second question, Sal, is this is definitely different. I really feel like our scouts have done a great job in the fall of talking about who these guys were. We had guys at East West, NFLPA, Senior Bowl. We did have the combine, so we had our formals, but we also, try and get around some of the guys, and I can't get around them all, but tried to spread things out. So I feel like we got to know some of these guys. The next step, Sal, is doing some FaceTime, Zoom, whatever your video conference that you use. We're trying to do those in lieu of these 30 visits, and I think that's helping. Is it the same as bringing a guy in your building or going on campus and being able to take him out to dinner or get him in a meeting room? Probably not. But it's equal. It's across the, everybody's dealing with the same thing. So, we'll get to the right answer, here within a few weeks.
Thanks.
Hey, Brendan, how you doing, man?
What's up, Marcel? I'm going to switch my screen and find you on here.
All right. When you add guys like Mario Addison and Vernon Butler, AJ Klein, Josh Norman, everybody likes to get the Carolina North jokes off, but with such an uncertain offseason timeline, how does that factor into adding guys who you are familiar with?
Yeah, I think that does help. And, that's part of it in play. These were some guys that we did target. Obviously, when we signed Josh, we didn't know this was going to break out like it has. But Josh was just a familiarity thing. We didn't feel like the system that he was in Washington played to his strengths, and we think he fits our scheme well. Knowing Josh, I don't think he liked the way things went there this past season. Any of you, the guys that have ever been around him, he's a great young man. He plays with a chip on his shoulder. He'll bring an edge to our defense, and I think he's got something to prove. That's what we're betting on here. But obviously, he's got to go out and prove that he can still play, at a level that we would deem acceptable. AJ Klein, familiarity with him. Obviously, he left around the same time I left. He went to New Orleans. Vernon Butler, Mario. Mario is a guy that when I was the interim GM for those 10 weeks, when Jerry Richardson was crazy enough to let me do that, Mario was a guy that I stole off of the Redskins practice squad. He had bounced around that year through several teams. Coincidentally, he and Jerry Hughes, I found this out later, but they had lived together a little bit during that rookie year he was in Indianapolis. So both those guys have kept in touch with each other, and I think we're excited to reunite here towards the twilight years of their career. But he is Mario's a real pro, and I know where his age is, but you watch the film, and he's still getting it done. And so I believe he's still got gas left in the tank, and he'll bring an edge of toughness, and he's just a really good rusher. And, you guys know we added Eric Washington. I think there was a natural fit there. Eric, transitioning to Vernon Butler, the light seemed to come on a little bit for Vernon last year. First few years probably weren't up to where we saw his talent level when we drafted him in the first round, but I think he had 6 or 6.5 sacks last season, and just felt like the light was starting to come on. So that's, I kind of view him, how we got Jordan Phillips, maybe a guy who not everything had played out perfectly yet. Jordan was a second-round pick, and we just feel like our system fits Vernon the way Jordan fit it, and hopefully he can, get to the level that Jordan did before Jordan left for Arizona.
Hey, Brandon, Matt Fairburn. I wanted to ask a little bit more about the draft and how things are changing. Do you think this will, you guys have a system in place that's so, routine at this point that you've kind of implemented, you've got your draft room set up, the way you like it. Do you think this will change how you view some guys that maybe had an extra question, that you couldn't check off, whether it was character or injury, things, those final boxes that you needed to check? Will it change your strategy or how you view certain players, maybe leaning towards guys that you've done more work on, or guys that are a little bit safer in that regard that you feel more sure about?
Yeah, good question, Matt. We are trying to close the loop, so to speak, medically. Character, learns, there's still some guys we see the physical play on the field looks good, but back to the learns that I was talking about, the receivers earlier. So we're trying to close as many loops as we can, either through our medical staff, making calls to trainers, doctors, whatever. Especially the bigger medical concerns would be anybody that was supposed to come back to the rechecks or non-combine guys. And so our guys are working to get some answers from some of the fellow trainers, doctors, at some of these schools where these guys were not invited to the combine. So, yes, short answer here is there may be some loops that we can't close. If we can't close them, those would probably be guys that might slide a little bit for us. Maybe I'm not as comfortable in the second, third round, but maybe I'd be a little more comfortable in the fourth, fifth, or beyond. If that makes sense, Matt.
Yeah, definitely.
Hey, Brandon, don't need to look for my ugly mug. I don't have a video thing, so tomorrow, by the way. Yeah, how you doing? Two things. New Orleans just the Saints announced that they're going to be having their draft war room in one of the Benson-owned breweries. What are your plans in regards to that? And the second thing is, how much with how things were ramping up on the coronavirus thing, and did you need to change your approach, as you said, to look for an established receiver, knowing there was uncertainty there? How quickly did you change that approach, and how much did that change over the course of maybe weeks, if not a month?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely was in the thought process when we, decided to make the trade for, we were looking at also options in the free agent market at receiver, because again, those guys would be veterans that we knew would be able to come in and understand our verbiage quicker than a rookie. So it definitely played into it, but it still had to be the right person, the right fit. You don't want to force something that you don't think is right. Obviously, time will tell if this move for Stefon was right. Sometimes best laid plans don't always translate, but we're confident, and that's why we swung. With a first-round pick. You guys know I love draft picks, and that was not easy for me to part with a first-round pick. But at the same time, I view this as our first-round pick, and I thought it was good for the value of getting a guy like Stefon. Your other question is, the league is still, they're still going through some things as to what the setup is going to be. I know there's a lot of things floating around out there. Some people saying it's 10 people, some people saying it's 2 people. I think by the end of this week or Monday, we're going to have, a final answer of where our draft room will be. But we've got options if we can't do it at the facility, and then we're planning if they relent and say we can go there. I think that's still an option on the table right now, but the final answer, John, is unknown. So we'll be ready wherever they tell us. If we got a draft in my car, we'll draft there. We'll get it done.
Like I was thinking Harbor Center, but it might be an option. But that's it. Thank you very much.
Got it.
Hey, Brandon. Good morning. It's Chris Brown. I just wanted to kind of get a handle from you. You've talked to us extensively about how you and your staff do all these draft preparations. You go through a myriad of different scenarios trying to prepare for where you're picking. Now, without a first-round pick, how much more difficult does that become, predicting the 53 things that are going to happen in front of you? And how has it maybe altered your approach in terms of direction, knowing you're going to be sitting out day one, barring some unforeseen trade opportunity?
Yeah, I mean, day one will be hard. We just got to I'm going to play some videos of Stefon Diggs when 22 comes up. But beyond that, we'll just be patient and go through it and watch it off. And then when the big thing will be when day one is over, which we do whether we have a pick or not, we'll stay there for a little bit and stare at the board and start looking over, okay, what's on the board that we like here? Do we have is there anybody left in our first round? Guys, we gave first round grades to. Is there anybody there? Obviously, those are targets. How long before a guy stays there before we make a move? A la Cody Ford last year, whatever. And then secondly is start looking, Chris, at all the teams in front of us and what their needs are. Okay, if there's 3, let's just say we were looking at receivers, and let's say we have 3 receivers there in the second round. And how many teams that didn't take a receiver in the first that we have penciled as a team that we see a receiver need for, maybe they reach here in the second round for that guy, and will the third guy get to us? Or maybe, okay, we'd love to have any of these 3. If 2 of them go, do we want to be aggressive and go get that other one, or do we want to be patient? Maybe we get one in the third round and focus on another position. So we'll kind of that'll be my plan. Watch day one and then see what's on the board for us going in and be ready for day 2.
Go ahead, Beane.
Hi there, Brandon. Good to see you. I'm wondering what message you're getting. I mean, it's obvious the NFL, and Jeff Pash said it the other day, that the mandate is that they're planning to start the season on time, full season with fans when Jeff Pash spoke to reporters. What's the message you're getting? What's the interaction with the league? And what degree of uncertainty? How are you dealing with all that at this point?
Yeah, I'm just, Adam, good to see you, buddy. I'm just taking it one day at a time. Any unknowns. I know there's all sorts of things out there. People are speculating. I've seen people speculating even on the college game saying maybe there's no season, NFL, maybe people. I think there's just so much out there. I think there's too many unknowns. And I think if you really talk to the people in the know, yes, everyone would love to get back life to normal. But, right now, this crisis in the health of our country and our world is number one. And so my focus right now is what's in front of me and is the draft. When we get done with that, maybe I'll dig in a little deeper and see where things are, May 1st and then June 1st. But we're going to be ready for all scenarios. Sean and I have had meetings with coaches, personnel, our football ops, all sorts of people, just planning for whatever hand we're dealt. And I think that's the best we can all do, no matter what our profession is.
Oh, hi, Brandon. It's Leo.
What's up, Leo?
I'm good, man. Thanks. I'm gonna piggyback on Adam's question. Maybe you can give us a sense being in Major League sports. I mean, the NBA, NHL, Major League Baseball, put their seasons on hold. Maybe they have to cancel that. Knowing how big a decision that is, and the money and the reciprocal, just the snowball effect of all the people affected. Could you put in a little bit of context how profound that was, that all the Major League sports and really took it upon themselves to do it without being told? It says a lot, because they did put everyone ahead of profits, I guess. And then real quick, like you said, you don't really know where this is going to go, but can you imagine in the fall, you got 70,000 people at Newer Field. You got to be really sure about this, don't you?
Yeah, again, a lot of unknowns. And yeah, it's something I don't think any of us, I've talked to my parents about it, and they're in their 70s, have you ever seen anything like this? And no, their answer was immediately no. And so I just, I don't think anybody saw this. We're at the combine, 5-6 weeks ago, and I don't think anybody saw this coming at all. It seemed like it was a distant problem that hopefully, another country would be able to get resolved. And here you go. We go to the combine. I was traveling to pro days, and then, I was at Clemson, and then literally things just started changing, not by the hour, but by the minute. And, we went from going to pro days to 3 hours later, I was getting all my guys off the road and trying to figure out how I was going to get back home. And it just kept changing, by the minute. And so I don't think any of us saw where we're at, but, it stinks. I know everybody's ready to get life back to normal, but again, this is bigger than sports, and we all got to do the right thing and social distance and flatten the curve and all the things that everybody's saying to do. And as hard as it is, I think it'll pay off in the end, and I look forward to that day when we get past it.
Right. Thanks for doing this too. And if I could just throw one real quick, just to clarify, do you in your gut, do you fear that the season's in jeopardy, or you just don't know?
I just don't know, Leo. I don't. Okay. I wouldn't want to comment away because, again, I'm not in the know enough. I've really just been focusing on the Buffalo Bills and, paying attention to, the governors and the leaders of our country. But beyond that, I think there's too many unknowns to make decisions. You see some of these major sporting events, being canceled. So, of course, every option to me is on the table. But I'm an optimist too. And so I'm going to think positive and hope that there is some type of season. And but again, I really don't know, Leo. I look forward, as I'm sure everybody on this call does, to when we can get past it and get back to normal.
Yeah. Hey, thanks, man. Be safe.
You got it. You too, Leo.
Hi, Brandon.
Who was that? I couldn't hear.
Oh, it's Vic.
Hey, how you doing?
All right, man. Thank you.
I see you now.
All right, good. Thank you again, like everyone else, for doing this. And in light, just following up on what Leo said, I got two questions here, but the first part is, you've talked about the specifics of how your draft prep is being handled. You've addressed that and so forth, but you've done the job you're doing for a very long time, and you've approached it a certain way. And organizationally, for the last 3 years, you've had a system, a plan. How have you, and I guess I'm saying the collective you, but you in your job, and then the collective personnel, coaching, everything, have you wrapped your mind around what we all know for all of us is this new reality, and the messaging? It's a big deal in your organization, especially to get everybody on the same page. What has it been like, as with everybody, of course, apart from each other, to get a unity message out there?
Yeah. I wish I had bought stock in Zoom a month ago when I was leaving Indianapolis, Vic. We've been using a lot of Zoom. I know some of our people have been using Teams, and it was like for a week, everybody just kind of went in a hole and just kind of paid attention and trying to do your job, watching film, whatever, getting ready for the draft or free agency. But, Vic, since then, been trying to schedule, weekly meetings with various people, my sports science and medical team and my strength department, and, talking about, if we don't have an off-season program, what are programs that when we're allowed to connect with our players virtually that we can get with them? Just all the different things that we have to plan for the unknown right now. And we got to be ready, just like we got to be ready to either draft in somebody's house or car or somewhere else or our facility. We got to be ready to conduct some type of off-season program, whether it's remote or not. We got to be ready. We still have to plan for, even if we don't have an off-season program, to go to training camp at some point and be ready to roll. And so I think we're looking at it, and the challenge within our organization is to find competitive advantage. All 32 are dealing with this unknown. And, Sean and I are not wired to sit still. We're trying to find ways. And so I think one of the things people like that I found is just that interaction. Even if we can just do a round table, seeing people's faces like right now, seeing you guys is, it's, you're stuck in a house, apartment, wherever your residence is, and you're not going out. And so sometimes just seeing people's face helps cheer you up a little bit. So we've been, between Sean and I, we've been trying to schedule that with as many people as we can and keep people, we're taking a positive approach to this, that we're going to come out stronger on the other side. And I think that's the only way you can lead.
And one more Diggs question. Obviously, it's well known that he wanted out of Minnesota, that he was very public about wanting out of there, and his dissatisfaction with the quarterback situation there. So that would lead to the obvious question of the kind of player that wouldn't seemingly be high on your list of players, focusing on what wasn't right for him and get me out of here. How did you resolve that this guy could, in fact, fit into yours and Sean's program?
Yeah, good question. I think one of the misnomers out there, Vic, is that we're looking for all choir boys, and that's not accurate. We're looking for professionals, and I would say this about him: he's a very competitive guy. We did a lot of. I mentioned earlier, he was one of the guys that we looked at the trade deadline, so we did some recon there. Terrence Gray was in Minnesota when they drafted him, so Terrence is still very connected there and was around him, before coming to Buffalo. There were other, connections from people that coached him in college that we have people on our staff. So we did do some digging. And again, this guy's a super competitive guy and brings an edge to that position. I would, I know diva gets put into that position a lot. I would not call this guy a diva. I would call him more of I think what he was referring to Josh Allen as a dog. And again, I think he will fit in. I don't know everything that went on in Minnesota. I'm sure, like anything, there's two sides to every story. I'm sure there's things that he probably wishes he would maybe have handled better in retrospect. But it's a clean slate here. And, we believe in our culture and we believe the facts that we know about him. We believe he will be a fit here, Vic.
Thank you.
Yes.
Hey, Brandon. Mike Catalano in Rochester.
Hey, Mike.
You've referenced that everybody's sort of in it together, all 32 teams, but you also just were talking about the offseason and the offseason plan, and you don't know what it is. So if you think about the difference between the changes you made a year ago and the changes you've made now, I mean, you revamped the entire offense. Does that not give you an edge, I guess, if you look at the difference between what you were trying to accomplish offensively with an offseason, bringing everybody in, and this year when you don't know when you're going to get all your players together, but most of your offense especially is coming back this year?
Yeah, I think it's, year two. Our offensive line made some really good improvements. Obviously, that was a major overhaul a year ago. And that was one of the things that I was answering questions, and I know Sean was as well, as how soon are these guys going to get on the same page? You got 5 guys trying to work in a chord. And so I am happy that this was not the year that happened, knowing the uncertainty of what the offseason will look like, Mike. But so we will have, at a minimum, right now we do have those same 5 back. We'll see what happens in the draft, but that helps. It helps having the quarterback, running back, all 4 tight ends that played last year, plus Jason Kroom is healthy again. So the continuity, I think, will help us on offense. It's funny, we had more changes on defense, than we did on offense, but we still feel like, to Marcel's question earlier, bringing in some of the people that Sean and I or Eric or even Quentin Jefferson, Dan Morgan was very familiar with him with his time in Seattle. We just, I know everybody, always talks about Panther people to Buffalo, but it's really more about people of familiarity. And that went into bringing EJ Gaines back. With EJ knows the defense, he knows what's expected, and we know that he can come right in and do that. I would say the only guy that we didn't really have anybody that had been around was Matakevich, but he was a guy special teams wise, and we brought Tywan Jones back. We just felt special teams. That's one of those things that we haven't talked about yet either, is something that we weren't good enough. We had improved from the year before, but not good enough to be elite. And so bringing Tywan back to help on our coverage teams as a gunner, and then Matakevich was just a real ass kicker on special teams, and so excited to add him. He's really probably the one guy that nobody had really been around. Everybody else, we had some familiarity, and I do think that will help us whenever we do return.
All right, thanks.
Yep.
Hey, Brandon. Josh Reed here.
Josh, how you doing, buddy?
Once, like everybody else said, thanks for doing this for all of us. But kind of want to look at a different angle of the Diggs trade. Was this the culmination of a long process? Because you guys did a nice job, you in particular, of adding all this draft capital and getting all these draft picks so that eventually either you could trade up in the draft to go get the guy you wanted, or make a trade for a veteran who's established like Diggs. Was this the culmination of something that you guys have been planning and plotting for a while now?
Yeah, I mean, from the standpoint of, you never know what opportunities are going to be presented, Josh. But, one of the things that, in our build right now, we haven't been able – I get asked about it, a decent amount. I know, with comp picks. I know Joe's been on me about comp picks. And what's up, Joe? And so it's one of those things where, we haven't been able to do that with where we are in the build. But last year we added enough depth, and we had some before where I've been able to move some guys late in August to get us some picks that maybe, okay, they weren't comp picks, but they were still picks that we could use. And so the plan is to always be in cap strength and in draft pick strength to be able to when an opportunity like this presents itself. I mean, there are certain teams that I'm sure would have liked to have traded for, Stefon Diggs or some of these other players have been traded for, but didn't have the cap space, or didn't have the draft capital to do it. So will we have that every year, Josh? I don't know, but this has all been a plan to have our caps, strong and have the draft picks to be able to either send them to acquire a veteran player or to move up and down the draft how we want when we want to acquire. You've seen if there's a guy that I think fits a need and the value, that's probably where I get, some people maybe say too aggressive in the draft. But if there's a guy that I think is a real sure fit, if I overpay a little bit, so be it. It's better than waiting, sitting on my hands and I'm not really fired up about a guy when my pick comes up. That's just my viewpoint. That may not be 31 other GMs, but that's how I see it.
Hey, Brandon, John Scott. How you doing?
Good, John. How you doing, bud?
As well as I can be, of course. When you make a move like acquiring someone with the talent like Stefon Diggs, you're adding now a third very good wide receiver to the mix. Your team offensive scheme really has been geared towards running the football since you've gotten here. Does this mean now things are going to open up a little more and we're going to see Josh throw it more with these type of weapons around him?
Yeah, I mean, you do have to be able to throw the ball. And the key in this league is you got to be able to throw it when the other team knows you're going to throw it, because you can't control things. Penalties happen, lost yardage, whatever. You're going to be in third and long when everybody in the building knows you got to throw the ball. And when in those situations, that is an area we have to improve, and I think we don't want to just throw it, every game. It'll still be team specific, opponent specific. If we feel we're playing an opponent and they're weak, with us running up the middle or running on the edges or the screen game, whatever it is, Brian Dave on his staff, they will see that, and that's what they will attack. So I wouldn't say, hey, the Bills are going to go out and throw it 40 times every week. But if it's a game that we have to throw it 40 times, we're playing against, one of these high-powered offenses that we got to keep up, then that's what we want to be able to – we want to be able to play any style that we need to. But we still want to be rough and tough. We want to host games in January, and we want to be able to run that rock when it's windy or snowy. We want to be able to play for all conditions, and I think it starts with our quarterback, how he's built physically and mentally to be able to do that.
Thank you.
Hey, Brandon. It's Heather Priestack. How you doing? Thanks for doing this.
Good. No problem, Heather. How you doing?
Good. We mentioned, so many of the new faces and the new players that you guys have added, but you mentioned before the continuity and the consistency, which of course is your offensive line now after re-signing Quinton Spain. How big is that, especially with, so much of the unknown with everything that's going on, but you have now all of those starters coming back where you've spent so much time rebuilding? Just how important is that to have that consistency and continuity with bringing him back now?
Yeah, I think it's great. We have, our offensive line coaches are back. We have that starting five, and we've got some of the depth players that were, here last year as well. Ty Nsekhe, is healthy again. Spencer Long, Ike Bodiger, Ryan Bates, all those guys are back. So we didn't lose anybody up front, and, we'll see. We added Darryl Williams, again, another guy I was familiar with that could come in and he'll compete. And Darryl, is one of the guys I haven't talked about yet, Heather, but he's a guy that unfortunately he was playing out of position last year. Carolina they had a need at left tackle, and he started the first 3 or 4 games there, and that's not his position. He's a right guard, right tackle, and I think when he moved, after they got their left tackle back, they moved him to the right, and his play was much better. You know, he was a really good – this guy was a second-team All-Pro a few years ago, had a bad knee injury. You know, similar to Trent Murphy, I think, you know, we're kind of betting on the fact that we'll have him not playing out of position and year 2 coming off that knee injury, you know. But he's the only new face on that line. I think to answer your question, you know, I'm excited that we will have this same group together, plus, you know, whatever additions we make in the draft or after the draft.
What's up, Brandon? It's Matt Perino.
Hey, Matt, how you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. Best to you and your family during this time. Thanks for taking the time. Couple things here. First on TJ Yeldon. Obviously, you guys haven't addressed running back yet this offseason. Where's the confidence level in him if you know, kind of get to a place where he has to be that running back too?
Yeah, we're very confident in TJ. You know, I can remember scouting him coming out and watching him in his years in Jacksonville, and he's a 3-down player, and he's smart. He fit us well. The great thing about TJ, again, he wasn't up last year, but just the way we had it with special teams. But you know, he played some when Devin got hurt, and he's a guy that we feel can play at any point. Again, very good out of the pass game. Was probably more of a threat than Frank out of the backfield. But we felt like Frank last year brought us that heavier downhill presence that, you know, maybe Devin's not, and maybe TJ's, that's not his biggest strength. But very confident that TJ can come in. You know, if something, you know, Devin's our number one as it stands. And if something happened to him, TJ has carried the load in Jacksonville and has proven it. And so we look forward to bringing him back for year 2.
And you mentioned Eric Washington, and it got me thinking how much you talked about Bobby Johnson last year and how important he was in bringing guys in like John Feliciano. I mean, how cool is it to have a guy like Eric Washington in the building with all the coaching experience he brings and the understanding of the skill sets of some of these guys you're bringing in?
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, it's refreshing, you know, with us making a change to have a guy like Eric who's coached in this system as a D-line coach and was a coordinator, you know, now is back as a D-line coach, and he's around, you know, he coached Starr as a rookie, Vernon Butler, Mario Addison. And so these guys are going to know how Eric operates. They're going to be able to walk in, not day one like it's day one. And I know Eric, you know, reached out to, you know, Jerry Hughes and Harrison Phillips and Ed and Mike Love and all the guys, Trent Murphy, everybody to, you know, establish that rapport and what will be expected. So I know those guys are excited to play for him, and Eric's going to bring, you know, a toughness and a grit. And just, you know, if you look at the stats at Carolina's D-line in his time there, I don't think anybody generated more sacks, you know, over a tenure than that D-line did. So we're looking forward to Eric being able to show, you know, the Buffalo fans and our team, you know, his abilities as a D-line coach.
Thanks, Brandon.
Yep.
Hey, Brandon, it's Jay. How are you?
Jay, how you doing?
Good. Hey, so you've talked a lot about the continuity. You know, you're looking at you've got it in the front office with Joe and Dan. You've got it in the coaching staff. I think only Eric is your only new coach. You've got it probably in your starting lineup. I think probably 20 of your 22 starters if you take out Zoe and then you add in Diggs. How big of an advantage can that be given that, you know, you're not looking at having much of an offseason here? You may not have any offseason. You might go right to training camp. How big of an advantage can that continuity be?
I think it can help. You know, it can't hurt us. And, yeah, to your point, there are some teams that will be dealing with new head coaches or new quarterbacks or new coordinators where they've got a new system in place. I think those are the teams that will struggle to get going. I know in 2011 is my only experience with a no off season. So if that were to happen, and those are some of the conversations that Sean and I have had one-on-one and with our respective staffs of, you know, what that was like in 2011. And, you know, my experience there was that was the first time I was with Sean and Ron Rivera and that crew, and they were whole new staff. And we were signing free agents like in August to go start training camp. I mean, it was something I had never seen. So it did take us time to get that rolling. And so I think that will help us definitely against some of those teams. Looking at our division, there was no head coaching changes this year. But I do, if you count the coaching and the players, I like the continuity at where we're at. But we still have a lot of work to do once we are back.
Yeah, and I just wanted to circle back on Diggs and ask one thing real quick. His contract in terms of a number one receiver, I think could be termed, team friendly. Have you gotten any indication from his camp that he's satisfied with that contract, or is that something that has come up at all in your conversations about him potentially wanting a new deal?
Yeah, I mean, that's one of those things I don't really like to get into contract stuff, Jay. I'm not trying to avoid the question. It's one of those things that's, I'd rather not get into. But he's happy to be in Buffalo, and, that's probably the best way I could leave it.
Thanks.
All right. Hey, Brandon, it's Joe. Swear I won't ask about comp picks today.
Yeah, we're not getting any next year if you can do some math.
I saw that pretty well. I wanted to ask you about one comment that Sean made at the Combine. I think he was asked about adding playmakers to the offense, and he said it was important to do that, but also to protect the quarterback better than it happened last year. And the only substantial upgrade or substantial piece you added was Darryl Williams. Do you feel that you've done enough to upgrade protecting the quarterback through the offseason so far?
Yeah, I mean, listen, there were players that we looked at. We looked at players at pretty much every position. How can they improve us, whether it was a starter, or a backup? And did we look at guys? Yes, but we're also confident. And I talked about the continuity earlier with Heather's question is, year one of 5 guys, this is probably the hardest thing to do is to get 5 guys working together. So I think naturally year 2, I think playing tackle is not easy. You saw, Dion had a pretty good rookie year. His second year, not as good. Last year came back strong. Cody had some really good moments, had some moments that looked like a rookie. So I think all of that, Quentin Spain back, Feliciano, Mitch Morse, we just had such an overhaul that getting on the same page is not always easy, and new coaches. And so I think all these guys, year 2 in this system, year 2 with the same guys next to them. Again, that doesn't mean, Darryl Williams doesn't beat somebody out. It doesn't mean that Ty Nsekhe doesn't beat somebody out. It doesn't mean that somebody we had in the draft. But at a minimum, we do have the 5. So we'll see how it shakes out. It's a long way till September. But if we weren't confident, I would have done something different and added another piece, whether it was, guard, tackle, or center. Joe.
One other follow-up. Now that you have Stefon and you feel confident in your offensive line, what are your expectations for Josh heading into year 3? I know it's a general question, but I think a lot of fans want to know because he's coming up on that rookie contract, and of course the 5th-year option decision coming up after this coming season. Yeah, no, I'm very confident in Josh. I know I've had conversations, with him, just life stuff, whatever, and I know he reached out to Diggs and some of these guys when we signed him, but he's working. He's out on the West Coast. He did a little bit of travel, I think, after the season, just to kind of burn off some steam and stress. But I'm just confident in Josh and who he is, and he is not going to leave a stone unturned. He's his own worst critic. I know he has many critics out there, some which I just think are way off base. But I am confident. Sean's confident. Our team is confident. And I think our fans and everyone else should be confident in Josh Allen. I have no doubt, just like he took a big step from year 1 to year 2, that he will continue to grow. And again, he'll have to, ideally, I wish he and Stefon were able to throw right now. That's not available. But I know he will figure it out, how to
make improvements to some of the things that didn't go perfect for him last year. But again, I thought he took some great strides, Joe, and he's looking forward to taking that next step and proving any of the doubters or naysayers wrong.
Thanks, Brandon.
Brandon, Thad Brown, I appreciate you taking all this time with us. It's that's something we certainly appreciate a lot. I want to ask.
We all need with face love, Thad. We all need some face love here.
No doubt about that. Even though the faces in this group are not really ones that generally get loved too often. But
I'm just looking at how hers is better than the rest of these guys.
I wanted to ask, with less visits with players, less scouts on the road, does it almost end up with all 32 teams kind of working from the same book of information, and therefore does it make it harder to find a day 3 steal in the draft, a Milano, a Taron Johnson, because there isn't that unique piece of information you guys have that maybe everybody else does?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I don't know. I think it's hard to say. I'm confident in our process. I'm confident in the work we do in the fall. I know there was some talk about people saying push the draft back or whatever. We're happy to draft whenever. We know the timeline. We have never thought that it would be moved. We have scheduled everything, even though we've had to do things differently, a lot of what we're doing here with my personnel staff. But we have split things up to connect with as many players or people that have been around these players to close those loops. And I'm very confident that we're still going to find very good players, with the 7 draft picks that we currently own.
Hey, Brad, I want to ask, what is it like for you to work mostly business as usual while the whole sports world is shut down and really the world in general is almost totally shut down these days?
I'm thankful for it. I'm a guy that's stressed when I'm not stressed. And so I get that from my mom. But it's just one of those things where it's able, I don't want to sit in TV and watch the news 24 hours or sit on my phone and read because I know what it looks like. And again, I started this out by, just thanking all these people that all they've done, to help try and solve the problem. But it's been a good distraction for me and I think my staff to focus on something other than what's hitting us in the face right now. And again, I'll probably be a little bit sad when the draft's over because I don't know what the next distraction will be or where our country will be at that point. But I'm looking forward to the next 3 weeks.
Thanks.
Hey, Brandon, Sal here again, Capaccio. Just your thoughts on the entire quarterback carousel that we've seen in free agency, and specifically, obviously, Tom Brady leaving the AFC East. And if you can, also maybe even touch on, Cam Newton and what he meant to Carolina and you guys down there, obviously moving on as well.
Yeah, did not expect Tom to leave. It's one of those things, all sorts of rumors and speculation. Obviously I'm on the outside looking in, but what a pro, what a legend this guy is. I'll miss, us playing against him. I go back and forth. You always want to take down the best, and that's probably the disappointing thing as I sit here was, in my time we didn't beat Tom Brady, and so we'll have to find another way to play Tampa to be able to maybe beat him before he hangs him up. But New England's still going to be very good. I mean, you look at what Bill Belichick did 2008, they got robbed of a playoff. They were 11-5 with Matt Castle at the helm. So I think it's funny and comical that people are writing them off and labeling whether it's us or another team as the team to beat in the East. The team to beat in the East is the Patriots. And until somebody beats them, they are the team to beat. And as long as Bill Belichick's there, you're talking about probably the greatest head coach of all time that was paired with the greatest quarterback of all time. So until we beat them, we've done nothing, and we got our work cut out for us. Cam Newton, I got a lot of respect for Cam, and it's unfortunate that injuries have hit him. I think if Ron Rivera was still there, I think Cam Newton would still be there. I think it's one of those deals, Sal, where he's been banged up a little bit the last 2 years. New regime, they just want to wipe the slate clean and start over. And I understand and respect that process. But I think somebody, should take a shot on Cam Newton. I think he will definitely, as I talked about Josh Norman earlier, I'll never forget those two fighting in a practice, a quarterback and a DB, and it was a real one. So two guys with chips on their shoulders. So I think Cam he's a proud guy, a lot to prove, and I think whoever takes a shot on him will appreciate what he brings to their team.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Bove. Hey, sorry. Brandon, obviously this has been a pretty chaotic time with everything. I guess just from a human standpoint, how are you staying sane? What are you doing that's not football related?
I just try and get outside. I put my headphones in and, listen to music and just walk, jog, bike, just something to kind of get away. And also sometimes when the calls back up, I'll just at least go walk. I know the other day I went and walked for like 2 hours just returning calls, and I got like 18,000 steps in just kind of jogging and walking. And it was one of those things. I've done it ever since I did it one time about 10 days ago. I've tried to do it more because I was like, man, I felt mentally better beyond the physical stuff. But other than that, just trying to use this time to watch players, and was still kind of back and forth last week. There's still some free agent, the guys that maybe their prices dropped. There's still some guys out there. We still could add, a player or two, but who knows? So mostly probably 80% focused on the draft now, Matt, but still keeping an eye on some guys that maybe their value dropped and would be a bargain sign for
us. Brandon, just one more from me. And again, thanks for taking all this time with us. I know it might be deemed as one of your maybe more minor additions, but bringing Dean Marlowe back, just seeing the way Coach Frazier used him and Saran Neal in your guys' big nickel package, and it just seems like that role is growing in importance. Why do you think that is? Is it just because more teams are playing 12 personnel, or do you see it as a role that's growing in importance, number one, and then number two, if so, why?
Yeah, I think if you have the right personnel, it is. It's one of those where you can match up, with various personnel groups that the offense is giving you. And, if you can do different things, that Buffalo nickel role that we have, whether it's a guy blitzing, whether the guy's dropping in coverage, I think it gives Leslie Frazier various looks that he can throw at an offense or at a quarterback and make them not know who's coming, how many's coming, who's dropping and not. And I think it's been an effective piece, but again, you got to have the right personnel. And Dean, specifically talking about him, he played some of that in college and bounced around and has played safety. When I was in Carolina, we signed him as an undrafted rookie and safety only, and he battled injuries. But I think the biggest thing for Dean too is he's really figured out how to make an impact on special teams. He showed some improvement last year. I think the reason he was struggling to get a jersey early on was he was only being used by the defense as a backup. And if you're not starting, you need to have some type of role in special teams. So that's probably one of the things I'm most proud that he took that head on last year, and it allowed him to get a jersey. And again, he's versatile. He can do that Buffalo nickel. He can play the safety, and then have a role on teams as well.
Thanks.
Hey, Brandon, it's Fairburn again. I'm curious. I guess this could go either way. I mean, you're kind of in a spot where I know you love going best player available, and you're in a good position to do that since your starting lineup's intact. You mentioned on the last question, or on a Stefon Diggs question, that getting a rookie receiver up to speed would have been tough, with this offseason kind of in flux. Do you think with the offseason that way, that'll, make you lean more towards guys in the draft that need time to develop because you've got the luxury of, a starting lineup intact? Or are you looking for, guys that, from your recon that are able to pick things up quicker?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It may be a tiebreaker, but I'm not going to pass up a good player, Matt. I'm still going to go best player available. I mean, we do put a lot of emphasis on, knowledge and the ability to learn and process information. Guys learn different ways. Some need to walk through, some can do it off the video, some need to be up on the board. But as long as we know they can learn it in one of those forms or fashion, and some maybe take a little bit longer, but I don't want to pass up a talented player if I know he can get there, even though, to your point, he may have a slower start if we don't have, much of an off season here. But we're really looking, early, as I was talking to you guys back when we spoke in the draft room back midseason, whenever that was, early in the draft is definitely best player available. As you move later in the draft, then you start looking at, okay, what are some needs, because now the best player available may not make our team, in the 5th round here, if we've already drafted someone there or we've filled up that position in free agency. So early on, 2nd, 3rd, and through there, it'll definitely be best player, offense, defense, whatever.
Definitely. You mentioned taking a lot of long walks. How's your family like having you around a little more this time of year? Are they getting sick of you yet?
I think they are. I think they're ready for me to go back to work. No, it's I think it's one of those things where this is, Matt, everything happens, as we all know, for a reason. And my viewpoint on it, maybe I'm crazy, is that sometimes we're all running 1,000 miles an hour and we're not focused on what's right in front of us and our family. So it's been fun I haven't had as many lunches and dinners with my wife and 2 boys since they've been born, and they're in high school now. So I'm looking at it. I got one that's going to be a senior next year and gone. So I'm looking at it at the positive in this, that enjoying the moment. And they've been playing video games too much, but I have to yell at them for that when I can, tell them to get their butts outside.
Brandon, Josh Reed, one last question for me. You guys were really healthy last season for the most part. The only big injury you had was Harrison Phillips. Can you kind of give us an idea of where he is in the rehab process, how confident you are that he's going to be ready to go when the season comes around? Just kind of an update on Harrison Phillips.
Yeah. Can you knock on wood with that statement? I'm going to knock on it right now. I'm superstitious, but Harrison is doing well. Right now we kind of ended, just with everything going on in our state and the area. There are some rules where they could come in and rehab, but we just wanted to be extra cautious and make sure it wasn't in our building. So what our guys are doing is they're doing some FaceTimes with him and Levi Wallace's and some of these guys that you saw had surgeries, but trying to find different ways to make sure these guys are getting the rehab, and Harrison falls in that category. He's doing as well as could be expected. He's very positive. He texted me some this weekend saying he had reached out to all the new guys and was excited. I know you guys know this kid teared up last year when he got hurt, and there's nobody that's going to be more excited to run out of that tunnel this year than Harrison Phillips. And I think I'll be just as excited for him. He's worked so hard, but he's doing as well as can be expected. He's still got a ways to go. He'll be a guy that, we hope will be ready for training camp, but we'll have to see. I don't know how much testing we're going to be able to do with him, depending on how long this, coronavirus lasts.
Hey, Brandon, it's Marcel. Like everybody's saying, appreciate you taking the time to talk with us today. You speak a lot about taking care of your own guys, and we saw that with Jordan Poyer last week, or perhaps the week before. These days, kind of running together. But how much of a priority is that moving forward for the guys with more urgent contract needs, like Matt Milano or Dion Dawkins?
Yeah, I mean, you'd love to sign all your guys back. You really would. We know that doesn't work in this business. Sometimes you only got so many dollars and things like that. But those are guys that you mentioned, Matt and Dion, that we would love. We've obviously invested a lot. They were drafted here in 2017. And again, the guys that fit like they do, fit the DNA, show the physical skill set to play the position and bring what they bring, you'd love to. At the same time, you've got to, these guys have representatives, they have values they put on themselves. So when we get to that point of talking extension with these guys, they are guys we would love to have back. I'll say that. Again, some guys really want to go test free agency. Some guys want the security. And so to each his own. As I said, with the class that just kind of walked out of here, we lost some guys. We got some back, but you know, Jordan Phillips and Shaq and Kevin Johnson, those guys, they earn that right to go out there and see what their value is. So again, we'll look at these things. In my perfect world, guys like Matt and Dion, I would love to get them extended here long term on what I call as a win-win, a win for the Bills and a win for those guys personally.
All right. Thanks, guys. Thanks, Brandon.
You're most welcome. All right. See you guys. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Brandon.
Thanks, Brandon. Appreciate it.